Hey everybody. This started out as outdated, and dangerous panels, which I'm sure you've all seen, and I added some stuff to it. I've been around for a while, started Home Pro in '86, and some of the builders don't like me. Especially this one. Little electrical humor to get things started. Fortunately, I've never seen this yet. So we'll start electricity coming into the house. Where's my cursor? Ah, rats. Sean, I lost my cursor.
We can see your pointer there, the black thing floating around.
I can't see it.
Oh, it's right above the panel. It's right there, Jim. I don't know if you have controls on there or not.
Well, I can't get to anything because I don't have a cursor. People can see my screen. They can see my cursor.
Mm-hmm.
I can't see my cursor. This is
You're
not right.
Try pushing escape.
There it is. There. Yeah, but when I go back to play, I lose. There's some reason I lose it. I forget why. Dang it. I have to do this without a cursor, huh? That should be interesting. Cursor, no cursor. To keep my cursor. Anyhow. All right, where the cable comes in the top of the meter base, under the hub nut, there's a big rubber washer that's supposed to seal, of course, and of course it doesn't seal. So we use electrical duct seal up there at the top of the cable. And what we're using is interior electrical duct seal that lasts maybe 8 years, if you're lucky. That has to be replaced all the time. Cracks and dries out. The stuff they sell at Home Depot and Lowe's, it's made by Gardner Bender. Rector Seal makes interior and exterior paintable duct seal, which is harder to find, but it is available. And when you see water in a panel, it's usually coming in either at the top of the cable or through an old worn out fabric covered cable, or it's just following the cable jacket in through a bad seal. Always check the meter base seal. If it's missing or it's been tampered with, that usually indicates unauthorized access to the electrical system. A lot of times when panels get changed without a permit, they just cut the seal off, pull the meter base, change the panel, stick the meter, pull the meter out of the base, change the panel, stick the meter back in, and go away. See all kinds of setups. We still see inside meters. If you see, I can't point at anything, of course, but you can see the cable over there that's all cut. That's not a service cable. Service cable's to the right. But of course, that indicates that there are probably other problems. And that is the service cable over on the right. And you can see that it didn't all make it to the lug down there. So that indicates probably a not very professional installation. Then when you see more than 1/4 inch of wire jacket in the panel on any of the wires, that usually indicates that it was not done by a professional also. Then if you look at the aluminum wires over there on the right bus, you can see they didn't all make it under the screw and probably are too large to fit in there, and they should have used a connector there that does fit into the screws, and then the wire goes into that adapter. I forget what it's technically called. Panels that are recessed too far. This one's mounted in framing, wood studs, and plywood, so it has to be flush with or protruding from the surface of the plywood. I always check the ground clamps. This is an old aluminum ground clamp. I prefer brass. You can see all the oxidation down there on the screw that tightens the cable, on the clamp itself, and on the pipe. That needs to be replaced. Here again, well, this panel, obviously, if they had put all the screws in, you'd never get the panel out of there, probably, the cover off of it. I mean, but of course, we have standards for panel clearances: unobstructed 36 inches from the front of the panel and 30 inches wide. Flickering lights typically indicate a neutral fault. This neutral fault was in a house I inspected for one of our inspectors who came over from Nahi, and he had random lights flickering while the whole time we were in the house doing the inspection. And I couldn't find my video. I have a good video that shows the dining room light dimming when I turned on the garbage disposal, almost going out. And I told him, I said, there's a neutral fault somewhere in the house or between the house and the transformer. You can see the size of that neutral cable with all the oxidation in there. It was more than double the size it should have been. He finally talked with the neighbors, and they said, yeah, our lights have always flickered, and they, just figured it was whatever, poltergeist, I don't know. And called the Dominion Power, and they have some kind of device they can check for a neutral fault with. And this neutral fault was in the ground about 4 feet down, where the neutral cable crossed the water pipe. And I can't point to it, but there is a place right there. There's sort of a crease in the dirt, and you can see a little divot in the water pipe itself. And that cable rubbing against the water pipe wore through the jacket. Water got in there, and the aluminum started oxidizing. The guy from Dominion said it was the worst neutral fault he'd ever seen. And if that fault had been in the house, it probably would have burned the house down. This panel was above a stairway in a really old house, and probably most people wouldn't have even opened it, but I did. And you can see if you look around the edge of that little 125 main breaker, they modified the panel cover. So under the tape, I put the tape on, under the panel cover are the main lugs right there exposed to the left. Fuses. Here's a fuse replacement chart. I was trying to get my cursor back still. Can't do it. And here's one type of fuse replacement. This is a service disconnect for an air conditioner. Copper pipe does a really good job. It'll try to run that air conditioner no matter what. Of course, AC systems, the manufacturer tells you what size fuse you have to have. It's right there toward the bottom above the model number, barcode. I always pull those and check them. Sometimes they're right, and a lot of times what happens is the system gets replaced. The old system that drew more amperage gets replaced. The old system here took a 60 amp breaker, And the HVAC guys don't carry all different sizes of fuses and breakers in their trucks, sizes and brands. So you end up with an old fuse there. Now, if the breaker in the panel got changed, it was 40 amp, it'd be okay. Don't see too many fuses anymore, fortunately. They are inherently safer than breakers because they don't fail. Edison base is simply the same size base as a light bulb. And some of you, if you're car buffs, you know about Lucas, Lord of Darkness, because of the Lucas electrical systems. And if you let the smoke out, that device won't work again. So now they have replacement smoke. Here's my cursor. Watch for it. Watch for it. Here it comes. You can see the smoke coming out. Need the Lucas repair for that. Now my cursor's gone again. Swell. This is an old Bulldog push-matic panel. If you look on the right side at the bundle of wires, you'll see a padlock there. That padlock was there 18 years earlier, the first time I inspected that place. There it is. And you can see I've got two stickers over there, one from 2020 and one from 2018. Fuses, fuses and switches. Personally, I've never seen that, but what I did notice about this panel is that there are no 15 amp fuses in there. They're all 20s and 30s. And if you think every circuit in that old house is either 20 amp or 30 amp, think again, they're not. They're mostly general circuits, 15 amp. The wires are small. And then we have this other problem up here at the top, because those lugs are only made for 2 wires, for 1 wire on each lug, 1 cable. Oh, there it is again. Sorry. If you missed the smoke the first time, you can see it now. There are a couple good websites that deal with obsolete and old panels. This is one of them. Zinsco. GT Sylvania Zinsco panel. I think this one is just a Zinsco panel. It didn't become GT Sylvania until later. These companies buy each other. These are a known problem. Here you can see the buses in that panel. You can see all the little marks on the buses where the breakers clip on. And here's a close-up. You can see what's happening. Those clips just weren't very good. They didn't make a good connection. There they are. You can see arcing and burning. And what's better than one Zinsco panel? I guess 2 Zinsco panels. There you can see the clips close up. Not a really good design. And of course, you can still get them brand new, because if you want them, those panels should always be replaced. Now it's GT Sylvania. I guess Sylvania bought Zinsco and then GT bought Sylvania or something. They're always buying each other. These panels just show up as Sylvania. This is an old Split bus panel, kind of a weird split, one vertical and one horizontal. Any old panel should be replaced when they're this old. There's no point in keeping them. Multi-wire circuits require a single handle or handle tie. So, what panel is this? It's this panel. That's a multi-wire circuit up there, but the part of the problem is we got 120 pole breakers in the 240 volt section. Single pole breakers in the double pole section, 120 in the 240 section. So if one of those trips, the other side of that circuit's still hot and there's still current on the neutral. And of course, panels need to be labeled. There we go, question mark. Yeah, what's this one for? Old AC. That doesn't tell you anything. Old air 220 changed to 110. What does that tell you? New bedroom. You don't know where it goes. Looking at this, you might at first think that that's a sub panel over there on the left. But if you look at it closely, you can see it doesn't quite look like a sub panel. That's thinner steel for one thing, and kind of a weird setup. So you keep looking, and you see that thing is made by Allied Products Division. It's part of an electric heater. It's not made for, it's not listed to be used for an electrical enclosure. It's listed air conditioning equipment. That's it. It's part of some other assembly, an electric heater assembly. Old, replace. And some people see this old tin wire and they think it's aluminum, but it's not. The tin wire to me has looks brighter, and aluminum looks duller. You see it there at the top left. This panel's recessed too far again. In non-combustibles, can't be recessed more than a 1/4 inch. That goes for any electrical fixture, by the way. It can be a light fixture, a receptacle, outlet. If you're in an older house that has tile backsplash in the kitchen, you always want to pull one of those plates and see how far back the receptacle is in the wall. Depending on what kind of tile they added and who did it, they can be back in there an inch. In that case, you have to install box extenders. There's nothing else to do without ripping out a bunch of tile. You see this? Wires that aren't in the lug and damaged wires. Those wires aren't supposed to be nicked or anything. They're supposed to be in good condition when they're put in there. fpeinfo.org about Federal Pacific. Jesse Ehrenstein is a good resource for old panels. Obsolete. This wasn't me, this was another inspector, but he's like, okay, I don't have to take the covers off those. Probably can't easily get them off where they're located. And a lot of inspectors don't take the covers off Federal Pacific panels. I do. I had a cover off a Federal Pacific panel just today in a condo. If you look to the left over there, you see a little bundle of white wire. That's zip cord, lamp cord, and it's going to the receptacle left of the panel. Of course, we don't use zip cord for anything but extension cords, lamps, that type of thing. This is, I believe, an E-type breaker. They had F-type and E-type, and electricians couldn't seem to keep them straight, and they tried to cram them in there, and they wouldn't fit, and they jam them in anyway. These are still available today. Not worth buying. These are the F-type at the top. So if you look at the second one down below the top breakers, you can see it looks kind of like an F. Then if you look further down, you can see the E-type looks like an E. And that panel's in really good condition. And you can see this where that breaker fell out, you can see the bus is eaten up. Thomas and Betts, gone. So you can't probably get new Thomas and Betts breakers anymore. It's time to change the panel. Anytime you can't get what the manufacturer says to put in the panel, it's time to change it. The diagrams on the panels on the data tags will tell you where the breakers go. You can see that the TBA 2-pole breakers go in the bottom 6 slots there, 8 slots. And this is all Thomas and Betts does now. They don't make panel boards anymore. They just make electrical stuff. Almost all of them have a warning on them. Use of other circuit breakers in this equipment. I can't even see the whole thing because of the stuff that's over here on the right, the go-to-meeting stuff that I can't move because I don't have a cursor. Can't see the chat either. But they always tell you what kind of breakers you can put in the panel. Grounding and neutrals, and it tells you right here, holes are suitable for, it's supposed to say number 14. It says $14. Suitable for 1 4 to 14, 14 to 4, or up to 3 14 to 10 wires. This would be Cutler Hammer because they're the only ones that permit 3 ground wires the same size under one screw, as far as I know. Everybody else is 2. And over here, they're hitting the 3. 1 2 3 4. Over here they got 4, more than 3. That might be the same messed up. It is. It is. All right. First glance, this one looks really nice. It's recessed too far. Nice clean job by the electrician. But you got to look closer. I always grab the service entrance cables by the jacket, of course, and wiggle them. The black one coming in is loose, and the neutral's loose. Those have to be torqued by an electrician. This is how some electricians used to tag everything with little paper tags. And here again, you got to look closely because you can see we've had water running down in this panel. You can see the rust on top of the breakers. And if you look back at the left bus, you can see the water mark coming down the left bus. This has probably been going right through the main breaker. Well, there are parts inside the breakers that rust. Anytime you've had water running through breakers, time to change the panel probably. Here's one that's really, really oxidized. Had water running down that cable. That's breaker finder. Breakers are rated for like maybe up to 10,000 off-on cycles. And the last time I looked, I believe they were rated for one short circuit cycle. In other words, if you short it out, you should replace it. This is a very neat wiring job. You don't see that very often. And this is where the electricians should be, who leave you with a messed up panel. How much more time do I have, Sean?
Excuse me. This goes until about 10 or quarter after, something like that, and then we'll jump over. I'm gonna leave in a second and post the link on the chat. When you guys transition, close this meeting, copy the link. Copy the link, close this meeting, and then paste the new link into your browser. You can also find the link on the Mac ASHI homepage. Sorry, Jim. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. I just got through it a little faster than I thought I would. I was trying to put something together last minute.
Well, thank you, Jim. Maybe people have questions.
Yeah, does anybody have questions? Speak up.
Well, I'll ask a question for you, Jim.
Sure.
I take off cover plates periodically anytime I see anything mounted on a wood wall or wood anything, and I generally find that they did not add the box extensions. Do you do that and write that up as well?
You know, Dave, I always do it in kitchens that I think did not originally have a tile backsplash. And I guess it hadn't really occurred to me to check the ones that are like mounted in like a rec room with a plywood paneling from the 60s. Yeah. Probably a good idea to check any of them mounted in wood paneling or solid wood paneling. And it just never occurred to me.
I find it in the shiplap that's real popular with the TV shows now, and people put it up in their house, and then they don't put box extensions, and they cut it too tight to the outlet, so if there's a spark, it would hit the wood quite quickly.
Yeah, good call on that, and I'll try to add that to the list of things that I check.
Do you say anything about grounds and neutrals under the same terminal screw? On the older houses that was allowed, but nevertheless not common practice anymore?
I do, absolutely. And I think there might have been some in here in these pictures that had grounds and neutrals together. And even in the older houses, I just look at the buyer and say, okay, if the panel's too old, I just say replace it. 40 years or more.
Okay.
40 is kind of the cutoff. I just look at the buyer and say, hey, this is the way they used to wire panels, okay? We don't do that anymore. It's wrong. So you can have an electrician come in here and move these wires around. If it's a smaller panel, they might have to add a ground bus if one is still available for that panel. And just move the wires around, add the ground bus if needed, and get it sorted out. And no more than one neutral per screw. Absolutely.
Right. Let's see. Are you tripping GFCIs and AFCIs as you're going through houses now when they're occupied?
AFCI, no.
How about GFCIs in bathrooms and kitchens and all these days because you go to breakers and who knows where they're tied in?
I do check those. And I had a trainee with me recently that tripped one. He was being helpful, right? He said, I have to go find that GFI. And he was gone for a good 15, 20 minutes. Now, occasionally I've tripped them and not been able to find them. But I figure the homeowner, seller, the house is occupied, might know where it is. And if not, they'll probably call me.
I would advise, if you trip something and you do not know where the reset is, get a word out to them, because I have had it where the freezer was plugged into something in the garage we didn't know, and people's food has gone bad. And that's happened to other inspectors that I know as well.
I've heard of that happening, and I would, if I had to, I would stay there as long as I needed to find that GFI. Sometimes they're behind furniture,
Yeah.
you know, they're behind appliances, they're behind whatever, they're hidden somewhere. Years ago, I had a house, or maybe decades ago, I had a house over here in Falls Church on a slab, 3-level house on a slab, which is unusual, cheaper than a basement. And the front room, not the living room, but there was a room in the front that was like a library or an office. And it had built-in shelving all on one wall, floor to ceiling shelving, 9-foot ceilings. And there was one panel in that shelving unit. The buyers did not want the shelving unit. They wanted it out, which apparently pissed the sellers off, but they got the house anyway. Had it taken out, called me back. The second entire 200 amp panel was completely concealed behind that shelf. Completely.
Nice.
So, you know, it's a modern house with lots of circuits, breakers, modern breakers. They had never tripped a breaker. But had they tripped it in the hidden panel, you know, who knows what would have happened.
Right.
They wouldn't know. They apparently didn't know there was a second panel there.
Very
yeah,
true.
but these GFIs, the other thing to watch for is extended kitchen circuits. Because a lot of times somebody wants a circuit outside. So the kitchen counter's right there by the sliding glass door. And there's an outlet above the kitchen countertop receptacle. And somebody wants an outlet on the deck by the door. So the electrician will just go in there and pull one down from the kitchen countertop circuit. And that happens often enough that the guy who is training with me, plugged his tester in and tripped the GFI and looked inside to see if it tripped at the countertop. And I said, no, it won't trip there. It's somewhere else. He said, well, there's a receptacle right there and there's one right here. Why wouldn't you use? I said, no, we don't use that one because that one's only for kitchen countertop. It can be in the kitchen and the dining area. And that's it. It can't go outside. And I've seen that more than once where they just pulled it right off of kitchen or dining area receptacle for an outside receptacle.
I've seen that as well. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Bathrooms are a real popular one where the bathroom fan, light, outlet, they're all tied together and to other rooms.
Yep.
Hey, I got a question about the service drop. So I've been coming across meters that have been swapped out for 200 amp, but they're still using 2-watt aluminum from the drop, the aerial drop down to the meter.
Yes. That's because the power company figures it's air cooled. After I bought my house, which was built in 27, I heavied up to 200 amp. And the cables coming across the street on the pole, from the pole are, I think, 60 amp.
Yeah, no, I'm aware that the cables through the air are going to be thinner. I was just surprised to see the cable, like the meter was in the inside of the basement. I was just surprised to see that they were still running thin wiring from where it connects at the house down the wall into the house to the meter.
I would flag it.
Yeah, I mean, luckily for me, in both cases that I've come across it recently, the panels were, 150 amp anyways, but if everything else is 200 amp, is it considered 200 amp, or do I still just write it up as being limited to 150?
The way I understand it is and you can chime in here too, Dave, but the way I understand it is it's limited to 150. It's limited by the service cable.
Well, the service is the limited factor, but you kind of have 200 amps because that breaker won't trip until you overload it at 2. And there was a time, I know in Gaithersburg, where they were allowing it, the Gaithersburg city inspectors, and that was completely acceptable. So it does become jurisdictional sometimes. It makes it very difficult, and if you're not sure, usually you're going to have other electrical problems in the house, and you can always say, have electrician verify this. This is an unusual observation practice, and that's how I would handle it.
I know in the past I've written them up as undersized entrance cable.
Yeah.